Welcome to Life Planning 101, brought to you by Kennedy Financial Services of Eastland. Tune in every Monday morning at 8:30 on KATX and KWBY, and again on Saturday morning at 9 on KATX and KWBY as Angela Robinson joins Terry Slavens to share important financial information to help you live life on purpose. Insurance, investments, estate and tax planning, and much more. All covered now on Life Planning 101.
And welcome into Life Planning 101 right here on KATX KWBY. Good wet Tuesday morning. For those of y'all listening not in the Eastland area, we had a flood yesterday, but we have Angela Robinson with us, so we have a special guest on the phone with us.
Yes, I floated right in this morning, and happy Memorial Day. Just want to take a shout out to recognize all of those fallen soldiers that have fought for our country and gave us these freedoms that we have to be able to float in this morning. So truly grateful for that. And yes, we have a wonderful show today. Before I get started in on everything, I did want to share some really, really important study that came out just recently. And I tell you what, I just was blown away. They said 9 out of 10 husbands actually agreed their wives are always right. The 10th hasn't shown up for the second study group. Yes. So with that being said, I think it's a very good introduction to what we're going to be talking about today. And that's what is a threat to your family? Maybe not the hysteric wife, but, something we don't talk about a lot is what happens if your income goes away? And how could that happen? And we have a special guest on the show with us today that has worked in the area of disability for over 20 years. And I tell you what, he's a font of information. I had the privilege of listening a couple times to his recent podcast that he did, and I was excited that he's going to be joining us on the show because I was able to learn quite a bit of information. And, I think when we hear disability, we really, I don't know that people just get overly excited about that conversation. But something that needs to be addressed is there actually a threat? And I think a lot of people think, well, it just won't happen to me, so why should I be concerned? And really, according to you, Kenny, thank you for being here with us. We appreciate it this morning. And Kenny Russell, by the way, is the Director of Disability Sales of Crump Life Insurance Services. But the reality is that when, something happens, it doesn't have to be this major event that would put you in a wheelchair or put you in a coma, which we all imagine disability to be. It's something entirely different on the average. So will you talk to that for just a second?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you very much for having me on the show today, Angela. And I'm coming from Seattle, and it is actually dry up here. So I'm sorry to hear about the flooding down there, and I hope everybody is okay. But yes, that is absolutely true. Most individuals, when you say the word disability to someone, you're exactly right. What they envision is a coma or a wheelchair type of a situation. And absolutely, that can happen, and unfortunately, it does happen periodically to individuals. One of our really good family friends got into a car accident and has been in a wheelchair for the last 10-plus years. So, it's a terrible situation, and it does happen. But that's really less than 1% of all disability claims.
Wow.
And so, it's tough to think about that, but, think about the individuals in your family or in your personal lives that have had cancer, had a stroke, had severe mental or nervous issues, have had, eyesight issues, cognitive issues, back issues. I mean, there's over 5,000 different ways that someone can be disabled by illness alone. And the majority of all disabilities are illness-related. I've seen studies where it's about 96% of all disability claims are illness-related, not accident-related.
Oh, so it isn't that wife that just went off the handle because her husband said she wasn't right.
Well, that could be the cause. I don't know. But I do want to just say that one thing that I like to talk about when we talk about disability insurance is actually to call it income protection instead of disability insurance. So that way, because, again, when we think of disability, we think of disabled sign, the handicap sign, that's the wheelchair. So making sure that everybody knows that it's not just those situations, and it's not just the catastrophic situations that's going to have you unable to work for the rest of your life. The average length of a long-term disability claim is in between 2.5 to 3 years. And so people can recover from disabilities, which is fantastic news, but it could be a period of time where, like you said, your income is at risk and it could stop for 8 months, 13 months, 25 months, or potentially the rest of your life. So it's a great opportunity to look at doing some planning to making sure that there's a plan in place if your income stops. Because, again, we're all doing financial planning and making sure that, if one of us passes away, unfortunately, that the family is protected and the income's going to be coming in. Well, you're actually about 4 to 5 times more likely to become disabled during the working years than you are of dying. And again, that's why both of those should be part of the financial plan and the discussions that we have.
And that's so interesting because the world talks about death being the biggest risk. Even a bank, what do they want? They want that life insurance on you. In some cases, I guess some cases you do see them want disability, but very seldom, which, the risk is higher for someone to become disabled than it is to actually die. Do you by chance have some numbers around, like if you're starting out in the workforce or, what are the odds that you would become disabled or need disability coverage?
That's a great question. And the statistics show that someone that's in their 20s has a 1 in 4 chance of becoming disabled at some point in their working career. And, obviously you could be on the mindset of, well, that means I have a 75% chance of not becoming disabled. But I would ask the question, and especially if you are having that family and you're started in your career, how important is your income? What do you use your income for? But also, if I told you that you had a 1 in 4 chance of winning the lotto, would you buy a ticket?
I think I'd buy a few.
Yeah.
I already buy a few, and I already know what the statistics are of even winning, right? But that's what people need to get in the mindset of is, hey, I want to make sure there's a good percentage chance that I will be fine for the rest of my life, which is fantastic. That's what we want, and that's what we hope happens. Mm-hmm. But my income to me and my family is so important that I want to make sure that if something happens, my family is taken care of because, like I said, more of a likelihood that I don't pass away. And so I'm still here and I'm still causing expenses for the family, but now I can't bring any income in, or even if I can only work part-time or have to get a lower-paying job, there is a part of a disability contract, a rider that you can purchase that if that's the situation and you have less income because you can only work part-time or you can't do your original job but you have to go back and get a job to get money coming in, you will at least get a portion, if not all of your benefits then at that point, monthly benefits coming in.
Yeah, so the need is obviously there. This is one time that you should listen to your wives because I do know this. Your wives make better planners and they'll think of things like this. What if? Your wife nags you about those things. But Kenny Russell, we're excited to have you on the show today. When we come back, we're going to be talking about if you've got a group plan, is that enough? And what about Social Security disability? I have a question around that. Shouldn't we just rely on that?
Segment 2, Life Planning 101, right here on KTX KDY. Angela with her special guest, Kenny from Seattle.
Yes, and we are talking about protecting your income and not due to death, but just due to living life, maybe having too much anxiety and some side effects, right? At the end of the day, it could be a stroke, heart attack, cancer, just illness in general. And, have you put yourself in a position that it's not going to implode your entire future if you don't plan correctly? And we have a guest specialist, Kenny Russell, Director of Disability Sales at Crump Life Insurance Services. He's been in the industry for over 20 years, a font of information, everything to do with a disability event occurring. And he gave us all of these misconceptions of what is actually out there. And now let's get to the meat of the issue. I think, two things come to mind when people think, well, if I become disabled, I will have Social Security kick in. And the other thing they may think is, well, if I become disabled, I've got a group plan. So, Kenny, can you speak to those two things?
Absolutely. I mean, the first one that I'll touch on is group coverage. And if you have group coverage through your employer, that's fantastic. It's a great starting point, and your company is trying to help protect you and your family if something was to happen to you. So that's fantastic. However, there's also some common misconceptions by individuals of what the coverage actually provides if you become disabled. A lot of individuals think, I'll get my entire income if I can't work. And that's unfortunately not the case. Typically, group coverage has a lot of limitations, and those common limitations are the acronym TRIP, T-R-I-P as in Paul. And that means the T stands for taxability. If the employer is paying the premium, the benefit is going to be taxed if you go out on claim. So even if you think you have a certain amount, you don't, because it's going to be taxed. The R stands for reverse discrimination, which means that there's a monthly cap involved with group coverage. And that's, could be $5,000 a month, could be $10,000 a month. It depends on what your group coverage actually is. The I stands for incentive compensation, which means that group coverage typically only covers base salary. So if a lot of your income coming in is either bonuses or commissions, that could be part of what's not being covered by your group coverage. And then the P stands for portability, meaning if you leave the company for any reason, you typically can't take it with you. So what we usually see in group policies is 60% of base salary to a certain cap. So if you're an individual who's, say like an executive of the company making $350,000 and your base salary is, $150,000, something like that, and you make $200,000 in bonuses, etc., well, there could be a severe shortfall or gap in what you thought that you had versus what you actually have, and then, what you're used to living off of and your family living off of from what you provide at that point. So the good news is that there is a way to supplement on top of that and get you back up to that kind of 60% after taxes and the limitations are taken out, or taken into consideration when you're looking at group coverage plus individual disability. So that's where you want to have conversations with your financial planner, with your protection specialist about what is my group coverage, and then provide them with a copy of your group policy. And you can typically get that from your internal website or just from your HR department. They can provide you that information. And then your protection specialist can review everything and help to show you what the limitations are to make sure that you know what your group coverage is, because the worst time to find out about what your group coverage provides is if you go out on claim.
That's right. And one thing I've always had in the back of my mind is, especially with high income earners, if they go out on claim and their benefits cut, they might be able to live off of that. But especially if that is a permanent disability event, what happens when they reach retirement age? If all their savings have just stopped, there's a lot of what ifs there that if you don't make up that gap, that could be a tremendous risk.
Yeah, because not only are you not having that monthly income coming in that you're used to living off of, but you're not putting money into retirement any longer, typically. So, yeah, and you could be liquidating some of your investments or retirement as well at that point. So you're correct. Later on, it's going to be not a good situation overall. And then the other thing that you asked about was Social Security. And it's a good notion to think that the government is going to take care of us if something happens. And they might. However, in order to qualify for Social Security, your disability has to be expected to last at least 1 year and end in death. And it's usually a 180-day elimination period at best. So even if you do qualify first time around, you're not going to get any money coming in for at least 6 months. But I think I've seen some statistics where 30% of clients that apply for Social Security are actually approved the first time around. So typically, in order to qualify, you have to keep applying, hire an attorney, things like that. So there's also some additional costs potentially. And also, Social Security is actually going to be very limited in what it pays out. Now, I don't have off the top of my head the amounts, but it's not what you think.
Right, right. I did some homework for you because I was curious when I was looking up the show, and I saw the average monthly benefit for Social Security received in 2021 was only $1,277. So imagine living on that.
Yeah.
After a 6-month wait, and
right.
And you're expected to be disabled for at least a year or end in death. Yeah.
Right. It's nuts. So, well, Kenny, I know we've got some questions around affordability. We've got questions around what if I become partially disabled, not fully disabled? What can be my options there? And then, there's this whole long-term care piece that is an issue, that a disability could actually turn into a long-term health care event. And, if you become disabled, the chances of you being able to get long-term health care insurance are probably slim to none. So, hey, there's a mouthful for you to be able to have when we come back on here on Life Planning 101.
Final segment, Life Planning 101. Angela?
Yes, we are talking with Mr. Kenny Russell out of dry Seattle today, and talking about the loss of income and really the need for some kind of protection, some kind of insurance in place, no matter who you are, or at least assessing your situation. And Kenny, I think, like you mentioned in the break, now for the biggest question of all, affordability, because who cares about any of this if you can't afford it?
Absolutely. And that's the thing is, most individuals will think, man, this is super expensive. And it is if you look at it a certain way. But that's if you're looking at, hey, I need the maximum benefit for the longest period of time with the shortest elimination period, all this stuff, right? Well, there's many different plan designs that we can do, and we can make it as affordable as possible. And that's why I always say, talk with your protection specialist, whether that's your insurance agent, your financial planner, whoever it is, and have them look at different options to keep within a certain premium range. And I will say the most common premium range that we've seen where people will put it in force and agree to it is about 1 to 3% of someone's annual income for an annual premium. So would you pay 1% of your annual income to protect 60% non-taxable of your income?
Sounds pretty reasonable.
Exactly, especially when you think about, like we talked about earlier, how important is your income and what does it do for you and your family?
Yeah, now that we know we have a 1 in 4 chance of winning the lottery, heck.
Exactly, and keep in mind, you can pay this on a monthly premium. Right. So, if you spread it out over 12 months, are you really even going to notice that you pay that? And especially when we look at what we do pay for, which is, if you even just look at your cable, Wi-Fi, and cell phone bills, that's going to be the combination of those three things for most individuals are going to be more than what their disability insurance payment would be per month. Right. So make sure your priorities are there. What's most important? What do we need to have? We need to protect our income, first and foremost, before we do anything, especially before we make any major purchases or anything like that. Like we were talking about the Social Security payment, right? And you mentioned during the break that doesn't even cover most people's home notes, right?
That's right.
We need to make sure that we're looking at what we can do to protect our income. We can make it affordable. We don't necessarily need to go out to a age 65 benefit period. There's shorter benefit periods you can cover. As we mentioned, the average length of a long-term disability claim is in between 2 and 3 years. So would you pay, $120 a month to make sure you're protecting your income?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know we're going to run out of time, and there's some real hot topics I want to bring up, but I know you had a couple things on your list here, which I think are really important. We work with a lot of business owners, and sometimes people don't think about that temporary disability event and what it can do to business overhead, your expenses. How are they going to get paid if things go wrong? Or if you have a loan at the bank, who's going to continue to service that loan on your behalf? You got a good friend, right? But those are really important, and I don't think a lot of people understand that there's actually insurance out there to be able to protect against events like that for business owners, and they're fully deductible. So I do want to bring that piece in, but then I'm going to turn it back over to you, Kenny. And I think this is really important. There's all different types of disability insurance, and there's different bells and whistles, and there's something called residual for partial disability. Would you explain that? Because I think this is critical for people to know and understand this.
Yes. So that's a great question. So there's total disability and then there's partial disability. Your contract will cover for total disability, meaning you're unable to perform the material and substantial duties of your occupation. Well, what if you can do some of those, or you can work part-time in your job, so you're not totally disabled in your occupation? And total disability, again, most people think home in a wheelchair. You may be a physician, a surgeon who has a slight hand tremor. You're totally disabled, although you can golf every day, right? But what about those business owners that can only work part-time but are trying as hard as possible to get into work and continue to work? Well, one, probably shouldn't because they need to recover. But if they can work part-time, they may have a loss of income of 20% or greater. And if that's the case, then they may that residual or partial benefit in their insurance policy will pay out at least sure that's part of what's being covered in your new individual DI policy that you're going to be purchasing.
That's not presumptive at all. But it's well said, because apparently everybody needs to be assessing their income protection, right? With it being such a big risk. So let's, without further ado, because I think this is really incredible that the industry has addressed this. Long-term health care.
Well, I mean, again, disability is for long-term care claim. So there are riders that you can get on your policy for catastrophic type of events, where if you're unable to perform 2 of 6 activities of daily living, you will get additional benefits on top of that, which that combined with your monthly benefit can be well over 100% of your income. So that's something that you can definitely take advantage of. But again, you'll want to make sure you're having conversations with your risk protection specialist to make sure that your policy is affordable and within a certain premium range. So you kind of have to take a look at what part of it you need. Right. There are some other policies out there that are part of the disability insurance world called critical illness, to where we can cover, again, certain critical type illnesses like a heart attack, a stroke, a cancer, something like that, where it will pay lump sum benefits, really, and most times upon diagnosis. So there are those types of policies out there as well. But again, during the working years, I would take a look at making sure to protect your income by getting a true individual DI plan, whether it's to supplement on top of your group, or if you don't have group, taking a look at, and you don't need potentially, depending on your overall situation, to look at the full Cadillac type of a plan where you're getting everything. Take a look at what your specific needs are, have a conversation with your risk protection specialist, and see what would be an appropriate plan for you, and we can figure out, like I said, a plan design that is affordable at that point.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Kenny, thank you so much for being on the show today with Life Planning 101. He is our disability protection specialist. So if you're doing business with Kennedy Financial Services, you have a direct line to be able to connect with Kenny and be able to allow us to look at everything and make sure that those gaps are filled to protect the income that your family needs. Thank everyone for listening to the show this week. God bless everyone. Hope you have a wonderful Memorial Day week. If you see someone serving our country, be sure to tell them thank you, or family members of those who have served our country. And we will see you, hear you, or you will hear us on Life Planning 101 next week.
Thank you for joining us for Life Planning 101, brought to you by Kennedy Financial Services of Eastland. Tune in every Monday morning at 8:30 on KATX and KWBY, and again on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock on KATX and KWBY for more Life Planning 101.
Advisory services offered through Smart Money Group, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Securities offered through Calton & Associates Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC. Kennedy Financial Services Incorporated is an independent of Calton & Associates Incorporated and Smart Money Group, LLC.